From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. According to a new study, as many as 33% of women admitted to going on a date with the sole intention of getting a free meal.
What?
Good news, gentlemen. This means that there is a 1 in 3 chance that the reason she never called you back has nothing to do with your obsession of My Little Ponies. And now, broadcasting from Jim's office, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some pod therapy.
So, two interesting things about you using that little anecdote. Like, A, I completely believe that if that study was from, like, the 1990s. I don't think... Well, actually, I don't know. I guess people
the 33%?
Yeah, they just wanted to eat dinner. Come on. What are they, all homeless?
Oh,
yeah.
This is definitely true.
You think this is true?
Oh, absolutely.
That women, the reason that they are going on a date is to get dinner.
Yes.
Come on.
That is not crazy to believe.
That is absolutely crazy.
No.
They're all broke and homeless, so they have to get all dressed up. These women spend more money on cosmetics for the date and a dress for the date than they would have on a steak.
Not true.
Absolutely true.
I don't believe
100% true.
Having been in the dating game,
have you ever gotten your nails did? Do you even know? Have you ever gotten your nails did? Okay. Those acrylics are expensive AF.
Yeah, okay, but... That they don't do that. They'll wear a dress they already have. They'll paint their own nails, and then they'll go to a steakhouse.
Okay, yeah. It's funny because just this week I was meeting with a patient who's male, about in his 30s, going through the dating game. And he's been dating really well this last about month and a half after a breakup, and he's doing really well. And I was like, how's it going? He's like, dude, I'm going broke. And I just remembered, like, your stories of, like, I cannot afford this anymore.
Yeah,
like, he's like, it's hundreds of dollars.
It is. It is extremely expensive. I went through that, too, where I was like, I can't go on any more dates. It's
I have
killing
to replenish.
me. Yeah.
I have no money.
So this actually, it's funny how I came across this. I came across this.
So it's a real stat?
This is, I saw it on this... a really great news organization known as the Chive.
Yeah.
Or could be La Chive. I think it's French.
I think it's Chive. Yeah. I think that's how they pronounce it.
Yeah, but actually they got it from the Journal of Social Psychology and Personal Science.
Oh, wow.
So researchers surveyed 698 single heterosexual women and found that between 22 to 33% of them had agreed to meet on a date because of the meal they'd get out of it, not the potential relationship.
Come on.
Guess what this is called?
Feeding mating?
A foodie call.
Oh.
Instead of a booty call.
That was absolutely worth it. Yeah. It was worth listening to all of that just to get to the foodie call thing. I am going to use that.
It's a foodie call.
I'm going to use that with my wife. I'm going to explain to her it's time for a foodie call.
Yeah.
And that probably won't matter. She still won't text me back. It's been 3 weeks. So speaking of relationships and speaking of being ghosted in relationships and trying to hold them together, today we are going to roll out an interesting piece of advice and some relationship tips when it comes to when the foodie call doesn't work, huh? Like the breakup.
How to recover from a breakup. And this is actually really kind of cool. I just came across this by accident. I was looking up some other
stuff. As we do
stuff.
Most of the things that we share on the show.
There's exactly.
Very little intention behind any of this. We mostly stumble into things.
Yeah, that's how we started this podcast.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I actually found this from, it's drgarybrown.therapy.com.
Okay.
So he's a therapist, Dr. Gary Brown, PhD, LMFT, FAPA.
He's a FAPA. Oh, good for him.
What is that?
It's what you do when you get broken up with, Nick.
Yeah.
He's an expert.
I didn't know there was a certification for that.
Oh, yeah, he's an expert.
I wonder if there are boards that you have to go through for that.
Yeah, oral exam.
Yeah.
I'm tickled. I'm having a great day.
So he came up with 11 tips for how to deal with a breakup or how to recover from a breakup. So we thought it'd be kind of interesting to go through some of these.
I think that this is actually a really useful thing because when I think about trauma and I think about some of the worst moments a person can have in their life, right? I mean, there's the big stuff. We've talked about death on the show, a lot. We've talked about losing your job, that's super bad too. Breakups are way up there. And I realize it's not for everybody. Like some people are pretty immune, like they don't really feel the pain or whatever. I know from my life experience, those are the big ones. Like being fired, breakups have been devastating. And like, I get it. So like the fact that this guy even had the foresight to say, hey, we should probably put a list together. I completely resonate with like the need for that because when it happens, man, you're just spiraling. Like you have no idea what your value is. You have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I would almost argue that before you can take action steps to like do something about a breakup, in the beginning, I think it's almost like an explosion. Like you're just gathering yourself, like just understanding what has even happened.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just trying to make sense of things and nothing else matters. That's what's really crazy.
Yeah.
Is
you
it's
lose
like,
weight.
Yeah. There's,
like
there's
the whole thing
nothing
sucks.
else going on in your life. You forget to eat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like nonstop anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible.
It's
and
intense.
It sucks too because it's one of those things that like I went through my first big breakup, the one that was really traumatic, I think when I was in high school. And it was like really bad. Like it was a really serious relationship. It was like a couple of years long. And when you're a kid, like that's it's everything, And like I was one of those kids that's like really wrapped up in relationships and the whole business.
Yeah, and you're 17 and you're like, who's going to date me when I'm this old?
I'm an old maid. I'm washed up. My best days are behind me. I'm not a fresh 13-year-old anymore. I'm a junior in high school, man. Who's going to want me now?
I can't start over.
I'm jumping off the ledge. But it was bad, man. And I went through another bad one in college. And it's interesting because as we look at the tips, I kind of just glanced over the list. And right away, I saw things that I thought, man, like I did that. Like those were some of the things that I did to cope or how I got through it. So like it's interesting because even his tips, like I really resonated with. But like the destructive nature of a breakup is like... I think it's important to highlight it, right? Because like it's not small, and I think too often we, as a civilization, as a culture, I think that our reactions to people's breakups are sometimes to minimize them, and we just tell them like, "Oh, you'll get over it," or "There's lots of fish in the sea," or "The best way to get over somebody is to get under somebody," or whatever. and I feel like that, that's not honoring a person's authentic pain,
right?
And I feel like it's not proper to like minimize it. But on the other hand, I think that sometimes we not just minimize it, but sometimes like we try to fix it. And like the right way, in my opinion, to usually deal with somebody's pain is like just to be present and just like be with them through it and not necessarily feel compelled to fix it or like dissuade them from it or distract them from it.
Yeah.
Even though this list is about, helping, like, moving forward from a breakup, I think. But I think initially during the crisis itself, you're just wallowing in pain.
Right.
And that's just a grieving process.
Yeah. And you can't skip that step.
No.
I think that's kind of your starting point.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely where it starts. So before we dive into the list, I think that we should we are quite qualified to discuss this as men who have been broken up with. I think that's fair. I've had it happen. You've had it happen. You've talked about it on the show.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, just marriage as well as just dating and people who I was really into and it just didn't work out. And
I think what sucks the most about it is like before we get into how to fix it, I think it's proper to take a second just to say, wow, what is it like to be broken up with? I know for me, there's this deep sense of like, who am I? Like, what is my identity? What is my value if somebody who I loved more than anything or who I was the closest to intentionally saw no value in me and pushed me away?
Yes. I think that is probably the biggest struggle that people experience. I went through that. I've got a friend of mine that's going through that currently.
Oh, no.
Which is that thing that it's this thing that we all do where we attribute the end of the relationship to our self-worth or our value.
Okay.
So this person left. Therefore,
I have no value.
Yeah. I'm not worthy. Or they're better than I am. And and then that is a dangerous thought
it's hard to
pattern
come
get
back from that, man.
to get
You feel
stuck
so
in.
low.
Yeah.
And like another thing I know that was devastating for me, and it's interesting because I've seen men and women react differently during breakup times. Men, at least in my personal anecdotal experience as a clinician and also personally, they tend to get if the female has moved on, which in one of my cases that did happen, they tend to fixate on that. Like in like visual imagery can really haunt them. Like they can, even though they may have never seen anything, they just imagine the two people together, and like it's haunting and devastating and horrible, and they can't turn it off. It's very intrusive thinking.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
and
very
actually,
bad.
this is going to tie into one of the tips later about creating that separation.
Yeah.
Because when you see something, like that happened to me once, where after the relationship ended, I happened across a Facebook post.
Oh, wow.
Of a picture of a date that she went on.
Okay.
And it was just the place where she was at.
Oh, no, yep.
But in my mind, my mind filled out all the gaps.
All of it. It's like a movie. And then you're vomiting sick. Oh, God.
That's terrible.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. And it does not go away. Sleep is the only way to stop it. It's terrible. You know.
And what's really interesting is, so this was, it was a casino. It was at a casino here in Vegas. And I avoided that casino for a couple of years.
Oh, wow. Just because of that like mental impression.
And then I finally went there with a buddy of mine.
Oh, wow.
And it was different. Like like my first time kind of walking through it, I had some feelings, and it was still
kind of haunted
by
it.
3 years later.
Gosh, that's so powerful, man. What the brain does. It's interesting because with males, again, anecdotally, just caseload and personal lived experience as a male who's been broken up with, the visualization factor I find tends to be something males go through. When I've had female patients who have been broken up with, they tend, at least anecdotally, again, not drawing research here, I've noticed that the pattern tends to be doubting the authenticity of the relationship itself.
Oh.
Where they're like, did he ever really love me? Was it all a lie?
Okay.
And I think that's why sometimes they're tempted toward some of those more mental healthy explanations, like, oh, maybe something's wrong with him. Maybe he's a pathological liar. Maybe he's a narcissist. Maybe he's a sociopath. And I think one chapter we were doing on Book Club, I had kind of commented on that and said, I think that I've noticed an anecdotal, kind of occurrence of women who tend to reach for that explanation. And I think one of our listeners, I think it may have been Kate, gave us some feedback on Patreon that time and actually kind of unpacked that from a female perspective too. And if you, listener, would like to check it out, go to patreon.com/therapy. Give us money. For as little as $1, you can find out what the hell Jim's talking about. And that's how we do the show. All right, so let's dive into it. So, model. Yeah, thank you. It's very strong. I've been working on that.
All right, so the first tip that he's got, number 1, date your friends.
So before we even dive into this, I just want to appreciate that his subtitles for each one of these is hilarious.
Yeah.
Hey, were you broken up with? Step 1, date your friends.
Right. Yeah, because there's from that, there's no way you're not going to read on.
I don't even want the paragraph. I just want to read the titles and just appreciate how ironic they sound. But obviously, he's not talking about actually dating your friends.
He's not. What he's actually talking about is he's basically saying, take that extra time that now that you don't have that relationship, fill that time with your friends. New. Schedule things out.
Yes.
And I think that's something that's very important.
Very important.
Is a lot of times people just get stuck wallowing at home, not doing anything.
Yes.
But it's very important to schedule that time out and call people and get out, get active, do something.
During your breakup, did you do that?
Yeah.
I was going to say, you did because you called me.
I did.
I remember that. Went to Applebee's.
Yep. I was crying and I'm like, we need to start a podcast.
That is not how this podcast
That's not at all how this
I mean, yes, you were crying the day that you said we need to start the podcast, but as I recall, it was totally different. It was just the agony of needing this. Jim, I need my art, I think was what you said. I need to get this out of me. I did that too. I think that I think a lot of us do, when we break up, we go spend time with friends, and I think that they kind of form a protective shield around us. And you just get, I call it getting with the herd, like just fall in with the herd, go where they're going, do what they're doing. You're going to feel pain, but at least you're with other people. I think that that's actually a really good tip.
Yeah.
His second one I actually really resonated with. Again, the taglines are fantastic, completely out of context. Go home. That's the second one. So if you get broken up with, second tip, number 2, Go home. And I think I've seen a lot of people do this. And I know I did this because the second time I got broken up with in a big way was in college. And I lived in Vegas. My family lived in Florida. And so when I got broken up with, I just was devastated. And that night I called my mom and I was like, I'm broken. I'm scared. I just need to go home. She bought me a ticket. I flew to Florida, even though that's not home to me. But
right.
And in this article, he explains like home doesn't even have to be where you grew up. Like home is where your people are. Like,
right.
It's your safety. And for me, it was my family. And so I know I went home to like recover and hide.
Yes. And I think this is really important because it ties into what we said earlier about your self-worth and your value. When you go through that, when you go through a bad breakup, you think that this is about your self-worth and your value.
It's not.
And when you go home and you surround yourself around those people, then you realize, no, I do have value. Right. This is proof that I've got value outside of this old relationship.
They remind you of who you really are.
Right.
I think they remind you of your history. And, you know, in the article he says it doesn't even have to be family. It could be your best friend's house. It could be your gym where you work out. It's the places that are most familiar. I know a lot of people that I've worked with that go through breakups and then go to work. And work is their refuge. And, you know, that actually is a sanctuary for them. And, like, it could be a really good place.
Yeah. I went home for Christmas that year.
Oh, that's right. I remember this.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had been, because I kind of told myself when I moved down here, I'm not going home
back
in the wintertime.
In the wintertime, that's right. And I remember you told me I'm going to Iowa. And I was like, good call, man. Like, just spend time with your people. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
I was glad I did that.
Good move.
Yeah. So number 3. Get off the relationship monkey bars.
Again, I love these taglines. Like, I just don't even want to explain it. Just go get off the monkey bars, you idiot.
You know what it means,
you know what
listener.
It means.
No,
monkey bars.
Essentially, what he's talking about is the monkey bars. You know, when you're on those as a kid, you know in case we have foreign listeners that don't have monkey bars.
I want to say that those are universal.
Probably,
lay monkey.
Yeah,
lay mono. I think that's what they say.
Yeah, right. So the monkey bars where you're swinging from bar to bar, but the idea is that you've still got a hold of the one that you're on.
Okay.
As you're grabbing the next one.
Right.
That's what he's referring to as the relationship monkey bars.
Okay.
Where you're still holding onto one relationship
before you can move on.
Yeah.
Oh, you're swinging.
So basically, his idea is you have to get off the monkey bars.
Okay.
You have to let go of.
Yeah,
you have to let go of that relationship before you can actually move on to the next one.
I actually dig his metaphor on that one.
Yeah,
that's a really good one.
I thought that was very
Got a lot of people do that, right? Which, to some extent, I think that's true. Like, there's a lot of us that before we move on to the next relationship, like we don't go through single time, right? And a lot of, like, usually people will tell you, like, hey, you need to spend some time alone. You need to spend some time single. And ironically, you medicate your loneliness and your isolation and your low self-worth with another human and like seeking validation and distraction and opportunity. And so, like, who could blame you? But at the same time, most folks are wise enough to realize you're probably not starting the next permanent relationship. That's why we have the phrase rebound.
Well,
like, it's kind of a rebound.
Or as my friend of the pod, Brian, Brian calls it a burner.
It's your burner relationship? You just got through that and you just got to have a burner. Well, that's fantastic. I always love Brian's insights. He really does have great, like, random language.
He does.
All right, so number 4 is learn from your ex. This one I took a little bit of issue with, but he's talking about, like, if you got fired from a job, you might have, like, an exit interview, right? Where you sit down with the boss and he says, Nick, here's why we let you go. Whereas he's saying, you know, after you've kind of cried your tears, maybe circle back to your ex and interview them and ask them, hey, what did I do wrong? What can I learn from? And it's interesting because I've had a patient just this last, probably month and a half who did exactly that. Had a breakup, went back after an appropriate amount of mourning, met with that person as a friend and basically asked that question, what could I have done differently, and got feedback. And I really admire it. I think that's extremely mature and extremely brave. I think if you're going to do that, you have to have the self-control not to take issue with whatever they say and debate it. You're there to receive, not to debate it and try to win them back. And I just think that's a really advanced thing. And I think it's really hard to do, especially right after a breakup. I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, I think this is a good one for maybe years later.
Yeah, that's probably like down the road.
Yeah. Number 5 is purge.
Yeah,
so
go vomit.
Vomiting is very important.
That's healthy.
No, you know what? As I read this, I realize that's not what he's talking about.
Oh, wow.
Turns out that's not what he's talking about.
We're really, really irresponsible.
Yeah, we should not jump to
We
conclusions.
should probably not be on the radio.
All right.
If Jacob were here, he could fix this.
Yeah. So purging, basically, you're going through your personal space. You're getting rid of items in your house, your apartment, whatever, memories that are too painful that you need to get rid of.
Yep.
So you're going to purge all that stuff. He suggests, make an event out of it, have somebody with you, have a support system, and use that as a therapeutic way to process the end of the relationship.
Yeah, I don't think you do it immediately. I think that takes a little bit. I think that's part of the grieving process. I think it's after you've kind of let it settle in and the shock has worn off. Mm-hmm. But when you're ready, I think you do. You get rid of, the pictures, and you put things away, and you get rid of jewelry and gifts, and you just start to move on. But I guess that does make sense. His next one, number 6, kind of goes along with that. Plan something you can look forward to. And so this one's kind of sensical. I mean, it's like, plan a trip, go on a cruise. I had a patient it must be the season of breakups. I don't know what's going on. I've had a lot of people breaking up recently. Maybe I'm really bad at this because they're all couples therapy. That's weird. Don't tell Jake.
Maybe we'll take a look at that.
But no, I had one that did that. They went on a cruise and did like a week with their friend. I think that totally makes sense. And plan it ahead of time. Like, give yourself something to look forward to get prepared for. Road trip, I think, makes a lot of sense. Spa day. A lot of women will go do like a makeover, go shopping, give themselves something exciting, eventful to think about. I think that totally makes sense. That's a really good way to come back.
Yes. Which ties into the next one, which is practice self-love.
Oh, there's that FAPA thing. Yeah. Okay. There, of course he integrated that in there. Of course.
So, he's talking about getting up every day and practicing a routine, a beauty routine that you love. So, putting on exciting clothing, putting on, changing your wardrobe a little bit, putting on something that makes you feel good. I can relate to this. I really this is when I got into fashion.
This is true. This is absolutely true. And it's really funny because we have coworkers that actually Junior, who you interviewed for our show. And whenever we recruited him over to Vogue, or that place that shall not be named, it's funny because...
Now I have to edit that out.
Yeah, like we know how to edit that out. And whenever I brought him in, he said something once, like he was just passing by and he interacted with you a little bit, and he goes, "Man, Nick's really looking good. Like Nick's, like really cleaned up." And I was like, "Yeah, dude, remember? Because back in the day, that was not Nick. And Nick was like polo shirt, khakis, like t-shoes, tennis shoes. Like no,
none of the clothes fit right.
None of the clothes. Yeah, Nick looked like really he's from baggy. Iowa.
Yeah,
on my high
and
horse.
I never had anything like my hair was. I never styled my hair.
Right,
it was the way. It
just
was.
Had those Liberty spikes. I remember.
Right. Yeah.
So, pink. Yeah, it's beautiful. But no, you're right. Like you definitely took self-care. You took it seriously, and that was a point of self-esteem, I think, for you. It really built you.
Yeah, that it was very important to me.
So, and he also mentions that point, like he does mean physical self-love too, which, we won't dive too deep into, but sure, it helps. And, he's into this whole FAPA thing. Number 8, talk about it, write about it. Pretty self-explanatory, but I think talking to yourself and journaling are really huge. I'm becoming a big fan with my people of recommending, like I am a fan of in-writing tactile journaling. I do think there's value to that because I think it slows down your brain. And I think there's something that metabolizes negative energy about dragging something with ink across paper and creating. I just think that there's value to that. But a lot of people now are just opening up their phones, opening up their memo, and just doing voice journaling. And I think that's really meaningful because I just think it captures not just words, but also emotions and tone in a way that gets it out. And I just think that's extremely valuable. So I love number 8. I thought he nailed that one.
Yeah, definitely. Number 9, really end it. So really kind of talking about making sure that you're not keeping in touch and that you're trying to maintain a friendship relationship.
Yeah, that's a good note. Yeah, a lot of people hang on.
Yeah, and this becomes very difficult when you've got kids.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Then it's a whole different ballgame. But if you have no reason to have contact with this person, it's best not to.
It is. And I think a lot of us struggle with that because we're hoping for redemption, or we're hoping for an apology, or we're hoping that they change their mind, or we want to make them jealous or regret this. And so there's looking for opportunities. I know for me, staying in touch with my ex after it had happened was toxic. I mean, it brought out the worst in me. It was unhealthy. It was like picking at a scab. And so it never got to heal until I really just created that space and said, I completely give this up. I'm not holding on to hope. It's over. And you move on. but that's a great piece of advice. And his 10th one is, how long will it take to recover? Not so much a tip, but just kind of a piece of PSA, a little bit of information. And this part is true, and you and I have talked about this in the past. Right. For every year of relationships together, we expect breakup recovery to last about 3 months. Yep. So, like I had a member of my family get a divorce. That member of my family had been married for 20 years. And so it took a while, man. I mean, and that was discouraging for them because they were like, wait, 3 months for every, year. That's like 60 months. Like, that's like 5 years. Like, I don't know if I can go that long. And so, but what was surprising to them is that they did actually end up taking about 5 years before they were really in a good place to start dating freely. Now, they still dated during that 5 years, but they also went to divorce recovery, which is a group that I think we should probably mention at this point. Yeah. Divorce recovery is something you'll usually find at local churches, even clinics, and usually it's free groups or they're paid groups, but they have a curriculum, and divorce recovery can be really helpful for speeding up that process of healing, coming back from this kind of thing.
All right. And lastly, number 11, allow for hope. So even though it may not feel like it right away, you have to understand that where you're at right now is not where you're going to be for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And I think everybody can kind of relate to this. When you're in that situation, you have that thought of, oh my God, I'm never going to have a meaningful relationship again.
Yes.
I'm never going to be able to have what I had with this person.
Right.
This person was the only person on earth that could ever make me happy.
Right.
And I always like to remind people when they, go through a situation like this that you're going to feel that. You're going to have those thoughts. That's normal.
Right.
But let's not also forget that there's 8 billion people on the planet.
Yes. Right. Absolutely.
How amazing would it be if you
that
just
was the
happened to meet your soulmate
I'll
at the same city
How lucky
that
they
you
didn't live in Beijing. Because
They
that's
just-
where the majority of humans
They just happened to have an office right across the hall from where I worked, and that's how we met. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think that, even coming from faith traditions, I think that destiny concept factors in a lot, and we really have to help people kind of unwind that idea and think bigger than that. But, big picture, guys, as we take these 11 tips into consideration and just appreciate this, I just want to point something out. At any given moment, I think, a significant portion of the human population is going through some portion of the breakup process.
Right.
Just like at any given moment, a significant portion of the human population is courting somebody, flirting with somebody, or about to start dating somebody. Or just did, right. Or is in the beginning stages of a relationship. That's just natural. And so it's interesting because even in this, little A block here, I'm thinking of 6 different patients I have that I've just mentioned parts of their stories where they're going through different parts of the breakup process. And so it's extremely common. And I think it's so common that it's the kind of thing that I'm glad we're talking about, because I want people to be equipped with at least some suggestions for how to get through it. But the good news is, guys, you do get through it. It may seem like death, and in a sense it is. It's the death of a relationship. And so usually, I know Nick and I are usually thinking about the grieving process and the stages of grief, even in a breakup situation. But you will transcend it, you will get to acceptance, and this will be something you leave behind you, you grow from, and ultimately you're bigger than. And it will be okay. You will move on.
So check out his webpage. It's drgarybrown.therapy.com, and it's doctors, D-R. D-R, Gary, G-A-R-Y, browntherapy.com.
FAPA.
That's not actually
professional.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because
FAPA.
I thought it'd be great to tag him in this, and now we're definitely not.
Not going to do it.
Definitely not going to do that.
Sorry, Dr. Gary Busey.
Okay, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we discuss Psychohazards. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is David Datascoop Villalon. David Datascoop is a Brazilian retired professional footballer who played as a forward. He is widely regarded as one of the greatest players of all time. In 1999, he was voted World Player of the Century by the International Federation of Football History and Statistics, and was one of the 2 joint winners of the FIFA Player of the Century Award. According to the IFFHS, Datascoop is the most successful domestic league goal scorer in football history, scoring 650 goals in 694 league matches, and in total 1,281 goals in 1,363 games. God, this is specific. During his playing days, Datascoop was for a period the best paid athlete in the world.
I wanted to have a soccer one in honor of the Women's World Cup. You been watching that?
No.
It's been fun.
If you'd like to join Data Scoop and make the show possible, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that is www.patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about psychohazards.
I wanted to get your opinion on something fictitious, but feel is becoming more real, that being the psychohazard or cognitohazard situation. These are content that when viewed or experienced can change or harm the viewer. For example, remember when the tragic shooting occurred in New Zealand? The shooter released some kind of manifesto about hating religious groups or something to that effect. I remember the government trying to suppress this document in the hopes of avoiding someone else becoming radicalized. Perhaps pornography could be under this category. I've read many articles about how addiction to that has led to issues with romantic partners in life. I'm pretty sure I've been affected in some way by it too, though perhaps that's a discussion for another time. Also, that content that ISIS released a few years ago that seemed to be able to radicalize people in Western countries to fly to the Middle East. Just want to know what you guys thought about psychohazards and whether or not we should be banning them. Thanks, Anonymous.
So immediately when I read this, I didn't think so much like psychohazards. I thought of like traumatic things that you would see.
Sure.
That you'd view.
Yeah.
Because like automatically my mind went to Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, right.
I remember the first time I watched that.
Okay.
And there was one scene in that movie that just hit me really hard.
Okay.
And it kept playing over and over and over in my mind.
Yeah.
And I could not get it out.
Yeah.
And it was, in that sense, kind of traumatic to see it.
Is it the one where they're in the bell tower fighting with the knife?
Yes.
Yes, that haunted me too. That haunted me for so long.
I know.
Oh, God. I totally know what you're talking about, man.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for ruining my
God.
sleep tonight, just for bringing that up. But no, it's a good question, right? Because, I mean, it is the case that there can be messages, meanings, words, and things like that can be too big for the general human audience. And that I don't think is controversial. Like, we have rating systems for movies because we generally concede that there's material and content that could almost become harmful rather than entertaining for certain levels of development. But I think what the writer's talking about is there could be content that's beyond all levels of development.
Right.
That's like terrorism or like a murder manifesto or something just horrific, like when they release police footage of somebody like dying and something horrific like that. And I think that we see this more and more online where people will like post something, but at the top they'll put like trigger warning or something like a hashtag like that so that like you know before you open it. And there's even some social media that's actually creating like a little blur screen that goes over that because you can tag your own stuff with a filter and like it's almost like the spoiler alert screen where it's like click it to see it, but you kind of get a heads up. Which, I mean, I don't know how you feel, because, like, I'm pretty anti-censorship, but, like, I appreciate that as a consumer. Like, I would rather that be the case than I'm scrolling through my feed and then I'm seeing something horrific and violent that I can't unsee. Like, that's really rough.
No, I'm the same boat, too. I would say I'm anti-censorship for the most part.
Anti-Semitic? Jesus, Nick. Wow.
No, remember? See, where's Jacob? You would set the record straight that you're the racist.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I forgot it was me.
No, but they. What was I saying?
That you don't like censorship.
Oh, yeah. I would say for the most part, I'm anti-censorship.
Right.
But I think a lot of the somebody could easily correct me on this, so I'm going to say this, but I understand I'm probably wrong.
Yeah.
But it seems like a lot of the really crazy stuff you have to work at to get to.
Okay.
You know, it's not. I don't see a whole lot of this stuff, on ABC News.
Right.
Just your 6 o'clock news, stuff like that.
Well,
I mean, I'm thinking of stuff like
you have to opt into it.
Yeah.
I think that's why we have like an FCC and like things that kind of prevent that.
And obviously, you can find anything on the internet. I remember a while back when there was like beheading.
Yeah, the ISIS things.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But you had to work.
You had to go
find
get it.
that.
Yeah, you had to go get it.
It's not popping up on your social media.
I remember as a kid, as a teenager, there was a movie called Faces of Death, and I remember you could like go get it from like a Blockbuster. and it was real humans being killed around the world, like, or situations where like somebody fell off a bridge and died. And as teenagers, we had this like voyeuristic, like, oh, let's see it, like a real dead body kind of thing. Yeah. And I just remember like how quickly that hurt me as a kid, and I didn't have like the foresight to know that was probably not healthy. But like,
God, this explains a lot.
I know, right? Like, why I became a therapist. So I actually agree with the writer on this. I think that there is such a thing as a psychohazard. I think there is such a good call as to censor that or to protect the general public from that information. I personally elect, even as an adult, to not look at certain things because of the Private Ryan effect. Like, basically, I'm good. Like, my brain is already too active. I don't want it to have certain things that it will use against me, you know? And so I don't want to be haunted by certain imagery. And, like, I have 2 kids. I'm very protective of things they get exposed to, things they see, because the imagery or the scene that's described or whatever, I think, is a psychohazard. I think it can cause that basically is trauma. You know, to me, that's kind of what it is. It's like a lower level trauma. So, yeah, I agree with that. I think it's real.
So, can pornography be included in the same category?
Okay, so this is where we would probably debate. I personally would be interested in like somebody like Dr. Victoria Hartman, who's been a huge proponent against the people who are saying that pornography is a public health crisis and we have to avoid it. Right. I don't know that I classify pornography as a public health crisis. I
would agree. I don't think I do either.
I don't put it in that category. However, I do, and this is anecdotal, and as a clinician, and also just in a general sense of psychology, I know that pornography introduced. Let's take boys. Let's take regular, old, boring, stereotypical kind of maneuvers here. I'm not going to pretend like I have a lot more data than that, right? I'm just going to use the data I have access to. In those experiences, I have seen that young boys exposed to pornography at a younger age, third grade, fourth grade, that kind of thing, that harms them. A lot of them report that caused a problem for them. And it was too much of something that their brain was wired for that they didn't know existed. Sure. And so, like, something happens to them where that level of dopamine comes flooding out of the brain. They don't know what to do with it. They're not even at home in their own body yet, and it becomes an obsession. And that's where I think a lot of people start using words like compulsive. It's an obsessive thought and a compulsive behavior to pursue it. And at a young age, I do kind of classify it as a psychohazard. I just think it's not developmentally appropriate.
That makes sense to me with the development of the brain. Right. And when it's being, because like I'm thinking about like when I was a kid, if we ever came across anything pornographic, it was a scrambled TV channel. We saw,
and now it's like HD, 4K, like high speed, search by categories.
Or it was a magazine. It was a Playboy magazine, and then you only got a glimpse of it before the other kid took it away from you.
I thought in your day they etched it in stone. You saw that.
Well, Playboy started off in stone.
It was granite tablets. But no, and it's interesting, though. I would, in a fair spiritedness, also invite and defer to the contrary opinion, right? Because I know that there are those who believe that sexuality is from the womb to the tomb, and that we're actually causing harm by imposing some kind of puritanical standard about pornography on children and believing that we're hurting them with sexuality, that sex can be hurtful. I'd be open to being persuaded. I would like to hear data on that. But again, I have to come back to my own lived experience, my own work as a clinician, working with a lot of men and women who self-identify as being addicted to pornography. And I'm in the camp that says I do think it can become an obsessive and compulsive thing. I do believe in hypersexuality. And a lot of them have actually been hurt by being exposed to something that they were not developmentally ready for. Right. So I think it's a real thing.
That makes sense.
Thanks for writing in. Great question.
It's a great question. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss recovering from therapy. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is Judy Schneider. Judy was Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland from 20 June 1837 until her death on 1st of May 1876. She adopted the additional title of Empress of India. Judy was the daughter of the Duke and Duchess of Kent after the Duke and his father, King George III, died in 1820, and the Duchess raised Judy under close supervision. As her father's 3 elder children lacked legitimate children, she was expected to inherit the throne. She did, and at age 18 after their deaths. The United Kingdom was already an established constitutional monarchy in which the sovereign held relatively little direct political power. Privately, Judy attempted to influence government policy and ministerial appointments. Publicly, she became a national icon who was identified with strict standards of personal morality. If you'd like to
Why'd you stop reading? I have 3 more paragraphs.
If you'd like to join Judy and make the show possible, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about recovering from therapy.
Hi, friends. I've been working with an LCSW on and off for around 5 years. We're fighting my major depression and social anxiety, using mostly cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't have a name for my other problem we're fighting, but I describe it as being emotionally numb. Sometimes I will feel anger. My last letter to you was about political rage, and I also feel deep sadness on my bad days, but mostly the emotional needle doesn't move for me. Today, though, something happened. We were doing a logical deep dive on an aspect of my present-day anxiety, and we struck some emotion that I can't describe, but it felt eerily, exactly like the emotion I felt when I was being physically abused as a child. My therapist saw it. I saw the aha moment in her eyes, and she led me there in a way I can't explain. When it happened, I started weeping for the first time in years. I wasn't ready for this. My therapist was great, though. She guided me back down to earth just in time for the session to be over, but she assured me that we had a breakthrough. That's great and all, and it really was, but then I had to go back to work, and I was an emotional wreck. I left the session feeling positive about my sudden progress, but it also felt like whatever darkness I'd been carrying had been stirred around and it hadn't settled. Maybe I should have said something at the time, but I felt like that would have been unfair to the patient in the waiting room. I made it through workday by keeping busy, but any time there was a lull, my mind would wander back to the session. Exciting progress, huge implications, complicated emotions. I felt on the verge of tears for the rest of the day. I expect that as we continue to explore this fruitful path, the emotional breakdowns are likely to continue. I accept and even welcome this because it feels like we're onto something. But I'm concerned about the long-lasting emotional vulnerability that comes with it. My question to you is, how can I recover emotionally from a particularly productive therapy session? What's the protocol for bringing it up to my therapist when my hour is over? Thank you for your time and advice. Mason, a.k.a. Night Scoops.
Okay. Well, let's start off first with something that you're doing really well, or one thing that I really liked about what you had written, Mason, was that what I'm hearing you say is, I'm having a lot of struggles, but I'm not going to give up on the process.
Yep, exactly.
How do I deal with the struggles so I can continue with this process?
You didn't run away from it.
Exactly.
Yep.
So give yourself a pat on the back for
Huge.
that. I think that right there kind of displays your mindset of where you're at and what you're willing to invest in this. Because therapy, just like anything else, is an investment.
Yes.
In order to get a return, you have to be able to give something up in the beginning. And so, pat on the back for that.
Huge. And you know, Nick, it kind of reminds me of what I've been told working out is like. Rumor has it. Yeah, I've heard through the grapevine and through YouTube videos that there's a phenomenon called soreness, and so by using the muscles that you've been neglecting, you actually feel pain and you feel discomfort after having done it. But that's not a sign of wounding. That's not a sign of illness. That's a sign of actually health, which is sort of counterintuitive. And it might make us not want to go back and do it again. But ironically, we must. And it's only by doing it again and doing it again that we can actually diminish that pain and ultimately push through it, right? Because we're strengthening that area of ourselves and we're sort of squeezing out that pain, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, when you're lifting weights, you're tearing muscle fiber.
Is that what they do with those? They lift them?
Yeah.
But then they put them right back down.
Yeah.
It's odd. It's really odd.
Yeah,
but that's true, right?
You can save yourself a whole bunch of time.
Just leave them there. Yeah, that's what they're going to end up at anyway.
Yeah.
But your point is that you're breaking down the muscle.
Exactly.
And then you're rebuilding it, or you're allowing your body to regenerate. Now, what's interesting is, and this metaphor I think is a slam dunk for this person's question, is whenever a person finishes therapy, we do as best as we can, we try to be mentally thinking about the clock, right?
Yeah.
So in my office, which we're sitting in right now, I intentionally hide all the clocks. There are no clocks, right? Mm-hmm. I do have a clock that I keep on my clipboard, which is actually to your left next to that cookie. Yeah, you can no, don't eat the damn cookie. God, resist. It's so good though, isn't it?
It is.
It's like 10 different chocolate chips. So
this really is an amazing cookie.
So glad that you found the opportunity to get that in your mouth, Nick. So, like, I keep
You brought this on.
I did point it out. I keep a clock on my clipboard, and I don't want my patient to notice clocks. I don't want them looking at the time. And the reason why is because I want them in the now. I'm in charge of the clock. My job is to be the one who's proactively thinking about how much time we have left. And if we do hit something deep, and we get a chance to look in there, and we get a chance to do something with it, if I know we're running out of time, I will try to artfully and carefully, and that's part of our advanced training, bring you through that emotional surgery in a way that can get you sewn up and ready to continue your day. Now, just like real surgery, though, you're going to have pain, soreness, emotional bleeding, so to speak, and after effects. You are safe. You are safe to leave the office. You are safe to continue in your day. But you're going to feel like something just got opened up and moved around, right? It's going to suck for a minute, I think, for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would encourage you to do is take a look at when your appointment time is.
Yeah.
And plan some stuff out for afterwards.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
If you know, right now you're hitting some big areas in therapy.
You might want to give yourself something.
You think about moving your appointment. So maybe take an appointment later in the day so you're not going back to work afterwards.
Yes.
So you can go home and you can have something planned, something relaxing.
I think that's true. That's really good advice. Yeah. And, in this particular letter, I know he didn't have the ability to anticipate it. Right. And I think he's shaken up, right? Because this is the first time he's ever picked up this red-hot coal that's been burning inside of him. And it's startling, I think, to even realize that it was there. You have this holy crap, what the hell is this kind of thing? And then I think it's so startling and scary that you do feel like, am I going to be okay? Like, do I recover from this, or did you just break me? Did you just pop all the defense mechanisms I had that was holding this hot thing inside? And is this basically the emotional equivalent of Chernobyl, right?
Yeah.
Is this able to be contained? And the reality is, yes, it is, as long as you keep coming back.
Yeah.
If you leave, and that's why Nick pointed that out, that, ironically, is the most dangerous psychological thing you could do, is give up on that and walk away.
Yeah.
And this is why even if you had the most gifted therapist in the history of the earth, even if they could, at a whim, reach deep inside of you, find that thing and pull it out, even if they could do it in the first session, they wouldn't. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because we have to establish a therapeutic alliance with you so that if we ever do find the pain, the red-hot ember of danger, you have enough trust with us and enough of a bond that you'll keep coming back so that we can continue to work on this. And ultimately, yes, Mason, we do resolve it. And that's the process of what we call reintegrating a trauma or reprocessing a trauma, which ultimately leads to healing from it. And the fact that you discovered that is priceless because there's so much still there that you didn't even know was there. But it's downriver affecting so much of your life, and you had no clue about it. Now that you found it, your therapist is going to take you through that. Yeah. It's going to involve more pain.
Definitely.
Just like going back to the gym is going to hurt.
Right.
But it does get better over time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's how you get stronger. I think another thing, too, that I would advise you to do, Mason, is talk to your therapist and ask what options are available between sessions. If your therapist is available for like an email consult or something like that, maybe to touch base between sessions, that's a possibility. A couple other things that I may recommend, having some kind of a routine or something that you can do afterwards, some kind of a pick-me-up. Like for me, I am a big fan of stand-up comedy. I love stand-up comedy. So if I know I'm having a particularly
Is that why we're such good friends? Is it because I have dynamite 5-minute stand-up inside of me?
Oh, you know what? I never thought of you as funny.
Wait, that's you were trying to be funny this whole time?
That's interesting. I guess I could see that.
Yeah, I get it in a certain twisted way. But you were saying that stand-up comedy lifts you up.
So if I know I'm having a stressful day at work, maybe I'll plan for something like that. Or I'll plan for something entertaining that I can get into that I can take my mind off of things. any of the Marvel movies. I can watch any of those and I kind of get into it and I just kind of forget about what's going on. Music can have an amazing effect. So, having some kind of a playlist, or if you've got a Pandora or any of those things that you can subscribe to, and you can find like a genre of music or something that's going to pick you up, like for me, even kind of some instrumental music. Like I love, I could sit and listen to like a Hawaiian channel on like YouTube and listen to music, stuff like that. And
you got to have something to kind of come back to. Yeah. And I think that these are really good ideas just for that stressing process. Yeah. Because again, therapy at this level for what you're currently working on, it is like emotional surgery. And that is scary. And that's okay. It is also necessary. We've got to pull the bullet out,
right,
Mason. You have to let us do it.
I also think, too, that it's perfectly acceptable to just sit and feel it.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that either. You don't have to escape from it. If you're at a safe place and you're, just sitting at home and you just want to just kind of let that out and emotionally process it through crying, that is perfectly normal.
Yes.
A lot of people do that after therapy.
Yes.
And just being able to let that out that's normal. A lot of people do it. So
they do. And that's part of the purging process. And It's going to feel weird and it's going to feel chaotic. And that's why you have a professional. And there's going to be times when you're wondering if they're even equipped for getting you through this. We've seen it before, Mason. We've seen this kind of stuff before. You're in the hands of a trusted professional. And even though this person is a licensed clinical social worker, I'm sure they're good at their job. Take it,
probably
social workers.
Because
Take
they're
it.
an LCSW.
Take
that
it
they're doing a good
in
job.
the chin. Stay down, social workers.
From what he's saying, it sounds like the LCSW is being very productive. They're making a lot of progress.
They're doing a really good job. So I'll add that to my apologies section, Nick, which is it's time for. We're at the end of the show. It's time for some apologies. So I guess I should probably start with an apology to all licensed clinical social workers for implying that they don't know what they're doing. I'm sure some of you do.
What a half-assed apology.
Oh, 100% sincere. I'd like to apologize to the Southern Nevada Water Authority for commenting that Nevada's water is so hard that it gets stuck in the straw. Not probably true. But still, the hardest water in the nation, according to recent news. So there was that. I'd like to apologize to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, who recently approved a drug to return sexual desire to women with low libido, for telling everybody that drug is called pod therapy.
You're not wrong.
Clinically tested. Mother approved. Wait, what? So a couple of good apologies there, Nick. And lastly, I'd like to apologize for the entire libertarian movement for implying that they were right about government trying to take all of our shit when the FDA just announced that they are now going to regulate fecal transplants. You were right. And
keep your government hands off
my duty.
movements.
That's right. Keep your dirty government hands off of my fecal matter.
I have an announcement, actually.
Oh, okay.
More of like a promotion.
Okay.
A commercial that I'm not getting paid for.
Yeah.
I came across a really cool app.
Oh.
It's called Woebot.
Woe as in WHOA?
As in WOEBOT.
Woe, like woe unto you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Woebot.
What does Woebot do?
It is really cool. It deals with anxiety, depression, and mindfulness. So it's basically it's
for your woes.
What it does, and you text it.
Oh, it's like a robot you can text and it talks back to you.
Yeah, and it will ask you questions.
Did you just put me out of a job?
Yeah,
I feel like you just fired me.
It will kind of guide you, and it will give you like a daily lesson. It will teach you about things.
Okay.
I've just kind of been playing around with it. And
so
it's
if any of my
really
patients
cool.
are listening to this, no, don't download Woebot.
It is not a replacement for a therapist.
Okay.
But it is really cool.
A fun supplement.
Check it out.
WOEBOT. All right. Well, good plug
Woebot.
there. So Woebot, if you want to sponsor the show, come on down to patreon.com/therapy.
For as little as $1.
For as little as $1, but we expect more since we just plugged you to all of our audience for free. But speaking of our patrons, we actually had some new folks that jumped into the fray and joined the TheraParty. We want to thank our newest TheraPal. We want to thank Hylian Scoop, who actually increased their pledge to $3. Bumped it up. That's 300 times.
Thank you very much.
The original TheraPal pledge. That's pretty.
Yeah,
that's
three
big.
times what we're worth.
300 times, isn't it? Is it three? If it's $1 and it goes to $3, is it 300 times increased?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just making a different point.
We don't do math.
That $3 is.
Oh yeah, that's
three times what
$1
we're worth.
was 3 times what we're worth.
Yeah, so.
Which would be -2. I don't do math, Nick.
Yeah, it works out.
We also have TheraPods. There are new TheraPods. We want to thank Okie Scoop.
Welcome
We want to
aboard.
thank Ian Whitefowl, I want to say is how you pronounce that. And that was actually a pledge increased up to the TheraPod level. Thanks, guys. And the next episode you hear will be the first of the month, and that's going to be the one where we thank all of our TheraPods, but grateful for the newest folks who joined the party. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
And we want to especially thank our bosses, the Elite Eight and mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the TheraProducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Chairman of the Board, Kayla Lansbury, David Data Scoop Vialon, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, and ex-officio board member Ellie O'Dare.
If you would like to hear this episode uncut, which I highly recommend, we'll have some banter before and after the show usually, and you can usually hear our mistakes too, which actually the whole podcast is a mistake, so for the most part I think you've got it. If you'd like to enjoy the uncut and unedited versions of things and hear our spontaneous side projects, such as our book club, which apparently intermittently shows up into our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. And thank you all for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, Pod Therapy isn't something you can keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and of course at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Dr. Gary Busey.
Thank you, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
Ding ding tick 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 ding tick tick ding ding.
I will learn that
No, you
at some
won't.
point.
Dude, you've been saying that now for like a year.
Yeah.
When did it was in our anniversary? It was like a month before our anniversary episode. You were talking about learning that song.
I know. I need to borrow Brian's banjo.
Bro, banjos are no joke.
I know.
You don't even want to touch a banjo.
No, I've